Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another episode of Rescued, my newish series that I've been really enjoying. So today I'm talking about a Colorado case, kinda. It doesn't take place in Colorado, but the person it's about is originally from Colorado, and there was a lot of talk about it when I was younger. I remember this happening and I thought it would be really interesting to share with you. Although I'm sure a lot of you have already heard of this story. There is a movie about it.
And this morning on the Boulder, we have a very special guest, Aron Ralston!
Oh gosh, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's called 127 Hours. Maybe you don't know the full details, you know, movies are slightly different. Two things before I get started. One, my giant rabbit is in the background. Don't be alarmed. I don't think she's ever been on my main channel. She just got spayed, so she's recovering from surgery and she's just chilling in the background on my bed today. Second thing is this video was kindly sponsored by Audible. So as you guys know, I just love using Audible. I am dyslexic, so it is a lot easier to listen to an audiobook for me. It's just a way more pleasurable and enjoyable experience. On Audible, there are so many inspiring authors and voices telling the stories that it truly makes it feel like you're almost in the story just by the way that they tell it. Audible has the largest selection of audiobooks on the planet. That's right, folks. And now with their new Audible Original selection, that library has gotten way bigger. And if you don't know what an Audible Original is, it's an exclusive audio title created by celebrated storytellers from all over the world, as diverse as theater, journalism, literature, and more. Now, every month on Audible, members get one free audiobook as well as 2 free Audible Originals, which is really, really cool. If you don't like your audiobook, you can exchange it, no questions asked, and you get to keep your audiobooks. They never expire. Even if you cancel your membership, they are yours to keep. It's like having a book on your shelf. Today, I'd like to recommend 127 Hours Between a Rock and a Hard Place by Aron Ralston, who is the survivor that we are going to be talking about today. It's a really interesting read. His story is absolutely incredible. I think after you guys hear the story, you'll want to know even more from his perspective. So start your free 30-day trial and get 1 free audiobook plus 2 Audible Originals today at audible.com/Kendall Rae or text Kendall Rae to 500-500. That's audible.com/Kendall Rae and text Kendall Rae to 500-500. But now let's get into our story for today. So today I'm going to be telling you about Aron Ralston. He was born on October 27th, 1975 in Marion, Ohio. He and his family actually moved to Denver when he was 12 years old, and he was very, very smart and studious. He was kind of known as a nerd in school, but all that time that he put towards school really paid off because he ended up attending Carnegie Mellon University and graduated with a double major in engineering and French. Not only that, but he was also musically talented and loved to play the piano. He even had a minor in piano performance. After Aron graduated, he got a job at Intel, traveling to Arizona, Washington, and New Mexico for 5 years. And during this time, he found a huge passion for the outdoors. He absolutely loved to hike, ski, swim, snowboard. I mean, literally anything that allowed him to be outside. And one thing that he truly loved was rock climbing. And he ended up getting so good at rock climbing over the years that he became really well known in the rock climbing world, like top level, very good, high skilled. He even was a search and rescue volunteer. And that just shows us that he was very well educated in wilderness and safety measures and, you know, basic first aid, things like that. So he was very knowledgeable when it came to handling the outdoors. At one point, he even got the opportunity to climb to the tallest peak in North America, which is Mount Denali, formerly known as Mount McKinley. Now, obviously, this would require Aron to travel to Alaska, and he would have to take a large time off of work, so most jobs aren't going to allow you to do that. So in 2002, he ended up quitting his job to pursue his dream. And eventually, he ended up in Aspen, Colorado, working at a local sporting goods store, surrounded by his type of people. And he was really, really happy in this job. And I have been to Aspen, obviously. I live here, and I love that area. It's so beautiful, really anywhere in the mountain. Working at any mountain town, small shop, I'm imagining would be pretty relaxing because it's very laid back up in those towns. It's slow moving. There's not like a hustle bustle vibe. So he probably loved that because other people he worked with also probably value being outside and understand taking time off for that, will like cover you. It was a perfect opportunity for him. He was really, really happy there. One of Aron's goals was actually to climb all of the 14ers in Colorado, which is about 50. And it actually did not take him long to accomplish this. So he decided to redo this goal as a bit of a challenge. And this time he was going to be climbing all the 14ers in the snow in the middle of winter alone. And he was definitely a bit of a risk taker. He was very confident in his ability, maybe too confident, and sometimes got himself into risky situations. For example, in 2003, he was skiing with friends in the backcountry of the Rocky Mountains. Unlike ski resorts though, backcountry slopes aren't managed, they're just kind of a free-for-all. They're not monitored at all either, so there can be avalanches as well. It's extremely dangerous and not recommended. At one point, Aron was skiing with his friends, like I said, and got stuck in a class 5 avalanche, which is like the worst that you can be in, and he was buried in over his head, but luckily he survived that. But only a few months after his accident in the spring of 2003, he decided to get back on the horse. Not literally, but you know, get back outside. So on Thursday, April 24th, it was a really nice day outside, so he decided he wanted to get outside anywhere, didn't care where it was. So he left his home in Aspen and just started driving west. He didn't have a specific plan on where he was going, but he ended up in southeastern Utah in the Canyonlands National Park. And this national park is completely in the middle of nowhere. It's 500 square miles of remote desert. So Friday night, Aron decided to camp in his truck, and at this point he was in the desert. He was far from any civilization. And then on Saturday morning, he woke up and he's surrounded by beautiful canyonlands. I mean, Utah is gorgeous. I've never been, but I've seen it and it looks incredible. So he decides he wants to take his bike and ride into the park. And he only planned on being in there, you know, for a few hours, so he didn't bring all his supplies. He was gonna come back in the afternoon and, you know, regroup from there and do something else after that. One of the landmarks that Aron specifically wanted to see was one that was called Blue John Canyon, and it was about a 20-mile hike from his base camp. Blue John Canyon is a slot canyon, and that is a really narrow canyon, and it also is very deep. So Aron got to the canyon and he was walking around it, walking through, checking it out. It's really, really pretty, and he got to an area that was about 3 stories deep. He then found a boulder that was wedged in between the canyon, kind of suspended in the air between the 2 sides of the wall. So Aron decided that he wanted to get to the bottom of the canyon, so he decided to climb down one of the sides to see if he could get all the way down. And he used the boulder as support. He kind of like leaned his hand and foot on it.
The easiest way for me to get down was to use that as an intermediate step. And so I stood on it and kicked at it, then stepped onto it. I was hanging from the boulder, from the top of it, where the last good handholds were. And that was when it shifted.
And as he was doing that, he thought the boulder was sturdy, but it wasn't. It slipped, and he actually ended up sliding and caught his arm up in the boulder. I'm gonna put in a clip of him explaining it.
I was hanging from the boulder, from the top of it, where the last good handholds were. And that was when it shifted. So I dropped down here, and the boulder came, and it smashed my left hand here, and it smashed my right hand up here, and then it slid down, and it actually dragged my arm down, and my arm was right about here.
Now Aron is at the bottom of a 100-foot canyon. Can you imagine? His arm is smashed under an 800-pound boulder, and he's looking up at this narrow, almost like window to the sky. He started to freak out. He knew that there was no way he was going to be able to tug his arm out. I mean, his arm was crushed. And let's talk about that for a second. The pain alone from the boulder crushing your arm would be so insane. I'm not sure how you would do anything else after that. And to make matters even worse, Aron realized that he made the biggest mistake that you can make if you're going to be going outside alone out into the wilderness, and that is tell someone where you're going at a minimum. Honestly, I suggest going with a buddy. I personally would never go out in the wilderness alone, but at the very least, you've got to tell somebody where you are, or like wear a tracking device or something. You have to plan just in case something goes wrong, that someone won't know where to find you. You know, he's from Colorado, he's from Aspen. Why would he be in Utah? You know, no one knows specifically to go there. He could be anywhere. He could be at any place in Colorado. No one knows where he is. So Aron didn't have much on him, but he did have a little knife, and it's not a great knife. But he first started using the knife to try to chip away at the boulder. This obviously is really not doing anything. I mean, it's an 800-pound boulder, and if anything, it's just making the knife more and more dull.
Oh, I just held it like this and chip, 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 tap, 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 tap.
So for several hours, he tried chipping away at the boulder. But it wasn't long before night fell and he realized he was gonna be there a really long time. I mean, at least through the night. So he knew that he had to conserve what he did have, and he only had 20 ounces of water. It's really not a lot. He did have 2 small burritos packed with him, which was good, but how long can that possibly last? He didn't know how long he was going to be there, so it was hard for him to know how much that he should consume at a time to keep himself going, but he knew that he did not have a lot of time, and that's because he had a limited supply of water. Humans can live a lot longer without food, but water, you need water to survive, and he only had 20 ounces. So it wasn't long before Aron started to think about having to cut off his own arm. He knew that the chances of someone finding him out there were so slim. This area did not have a lot of people going through it, and you know, the weekend was coming to an end, and so the weekend hikers were all gonna be done for the week. His best chance was already coming to an end as Sunday night was coming closer. This area in Blue John Canyon that he chose was specifically chosen by him because there wasn't a lot of people there and he wanted to be alone. So he had another night in the canyon, and then the next day rolled around and he continued to try to figure out ways that he could get out of there, including making a pulley system somehow. He tried to rig a system that could move the boulder, but it's 800 pounds. It wasn't gonna work. Aron also realized at this point that he wasn't supposed to be at work until Tuesday. So he was not going to be looked for by people at his job until then. And it was Saturday night. So at this point, Aron decided to start recording himself with his video camera. He didn't think he really had much of a chance, and he wanted to make sure whoever found him got the footage to his parents.
5 on Sunday. This marks my 24-hour mark of being stuck. Whoever finds this, please make an attempt to get it to them. I can't stop thinking about how good grapefruit juice, or margarita, or an OJ, or a popsicle, all these great things that I would love to have. An orange, oh, a tangerine. I can't think about that stuff. It's really sinking in how dumb this is. So many things about it. So many things. It's gonna be a really long time before anybody gets to me. God, I'm really screwed. I'm going to shrivel up right here over the course of the next few days. It's pretty much suicide. It's 4 hours from here to my vehicle. Climbing would probably be impossible with one hand. The blood loss and my dehydration, I think, are ruling that out. I think I would die if I cut my arm.
At this point, Aron was starting to run out of food and water eventually, and he knew that he could only survive about 3 more days without water after it was gone. So he did not have a lot of time. He said he was already starting to feel the effects of extreme dehydration. He was unable to control his body temperature. He'd get really hot and really cold, and he just felt like his body was falling apart. So eventually Monday rolled around, and it had officially been 3 days since he was originally first stuck in the canyon. In addition to dehydration and hypothermia, Aron was also really sleep deprived just because of the way he was standing up. It was really, really uncomfortable. I mean, can you imagine standing in that position with your arm stuck, smashed under a rock, and also standing and trying to like get some Z's? You know, that's pretty hard. He said he would go in and out of like a dreamlike state, but he never felt like he was getting full sleep. So now his body is really lacking all of the basic human essentials, and it's gonna go downhill quick. On Monday night, he was almost completely out of food and water, so he decided to start saving his urine because As disgusting as it is, it can save your life. If you have no water, you can drink your own urine. By Tuesday morning, Aron was starting to realize that if he didn't just cut off his own arm, he was going to die there. He had just finished his last sip of water and he knew he did not have that much time. So he had to think quick. He had to have, you know, so much strength to be able to do it that he couldn't wait until the absolute last second when he was barely alive. And this was also the day that Aron was supposed to go into work, so his boss did freak out a little bit, but thought, you know, I'll give him one extra day just because he's so skilled that he's probably fine, you know. Maybe he's just running late or he did get stuck. I don't really know what he was thinking. I honestly would have called right away. That seems kind of crazy to me. So I'll warn you, this next part is a little bit gross. Aron decided that he was going to see if his knife was sharp enough to cut his arm off. He said he started to do it, but it was so dull that it was barely cutting through his skin.
And I took the knife and I stabbed myself into the upper part of my forearm right here, and was able to sink the knife blade in, but I wouldn't ever be able to cut through the bone with this knife.
He knew that there would be no way to actually cut through the bone.
Jesus. I tried cutting my arm off. I couldn't even barely break the skin with this stupid knife. I tried a couple different blades and all I did was just mark myself up. I could barely even get any blood to draw.
By Wednesday morning, Aron still hadn't showed up for his shift again, so his boss at this point decided he was going to report it.
Down deep in my stomach, I knew something was seriously wrong. Someone of his physical abilities, if they're 50 miles in the middle of nowhere and break their leg, he's probably gonna be able to crawl out in a day, or do whatever it is that he needs to do.
Aron's roommate also was concerned about him and had no idea where he was. So a missing persons report was filed by Aspen PD, and they also informed Aron's parents about their missing son.
I answered the home phone line, and Brian told me who it was and asked me if I knew about Aron or where he was, and I said, no, I have no idea. Isn't he at work? And he said, no, he's overdue, didn't show up yesterday and didn't show up this morning. And I said, Brian, you understand what that means? And he said, yeah, I fear.
I said, I think I know as well as you do. It's very serious as well.
That means he's in deep trouble. That something is really, really wrong.
Aron was starting to feel extreme guilt about the fact that he didn't tell anyone where he was. He knew better than that. He normally did. I don't know why, for whatever reason, he decided not to, but he really was starting to regret that. He was starting to think about all the things in his life that he was going to miss, including his sister's upcoming wedding, which is, you know, really depressing to think about. So at one point, he decided to etch his own name into the rock with the knife, along with his birthday and RIP next to it, which is really sad.
ARON right there. Just to identify who this body was that was here. And I etched October 75 above my name. And I etched April 03 below my name. And I wrote RIP. If I had a way to end it, I probably would. It's miserable. It's cold. I can't keep the wind off of me. It just blows. It's not even a stiff breeze, but it's cold. I'm doing what I can, but this sucks. The worst ways to go, knowing it's going to happen.
He was pretty certain that he was going to die. He even left instructions on that camera for them to cremate him and scatter his ashes. But to his surprise, Thursday morning rolled around and Aron was still alive. By this time, police had actually traced his credit card to a grocery store in Moab. So search teams started to check trails around there to see if they could find his car. But in the meantime, Aron actually decided to make the decision to try and cut his arm off.
Started yanking my hand, my arm, and I was giving it everything that I had. and was twisting myself around and trying to slide my arm up and down like this.
He knew he wouldn't be able to cut through with a knife, so instead he decided to break bone because his arm was pretty much dead. I mean, the rest of it is like just fucked. So a lot of the nerves are dead, but it's still incredibly painful, but it was easier at this point.
It came to me, this epiphany that I could break the bones because my arm was caught so tightly that I could torque myself.
And this is the really gnarly part, but he was basically able to break his bone in 2 different ways to free most of his body from the boulder. He just had skin and tendons like stuck in there.
I slammed my body against the opposite wall. I grabbed the backside of the boulder and even got my feet up to where I was standing halfway up the wall, grabbing the backside of the rock and humping my body over it until finally that bottom bone snapped, and this pow sound went kind of echoing through the canyon. And I don't even know if I started feeling excited at that point, but I just knew the next thing that I had to do was that I had to break the other bone. And so I grabbed the bottom side of the rock and pushed and tried to sink myself down until I was pushing up to create the downward leverage on the top bone until it too made the same noise, pow! And I said to myself, here we go, Aron, you're in it now.
He just had skin and tendons like stuck in there. And so he had to cut through all of that with the little knife. Like, I can't imagine how long that took and how painful that was. And he said one of the worst parts was cutting the nerve ending. He even had to cut through the tendons with pliers.
I just dove into this exercise, this surgical procedure. So I ended up taking the pliers side of the knife and using that to grab and twist and rip until the tendon gave way. Boom, and I wasn't even attached anymore, and I fell down like this, and I was free.
But that is the will to survive, because, you know, once he was done, he was free. Aron walked out of that canyon on his own. That's fucking amazing. Aron had a tourniquet around his arm, he put it in a makeshift sling, and he started heading out of the canyon by himself. And at this time, investigators had found his car and were doing a massive search of the area. But I still don't know if they would have found him because that area was so hidden where he was actually stuck that it's possible that even if they did search, they wouldn't have found him in time. So it was pretty necessary for him to cut his arm off. So he climbed through the rest of the canyon until it opened up into a cliff area. And he was actually able to rappel down the cliff. I don't know how he did this. This is insane. So after he got down from the cliff, he still had to hike another 7 miles out of the canyon. Then he would have to climb an 800-foot, really steep hill to get to his truck. He was in horrible shape at this point. Even walking was getting difficult for him. He had lost over 25% of his blood supply. While he was walking, he actually came in contact with someone though. It was a couple and their kid who had come from the Netherlands to see Utah, and they were shocked to see him like that.
And we saw a man covered with blood.
And they just came running back, and I started telling them,
I just had to cut off my arm a few hours ago. I need help, I need medical attention, I need a helicopter.
They immediately tried to help. They gave him 2 Oreos, which was all they had, and some water. The man stayed with him while the woman and her son went back to go get help, and they walked and walked and walked, and finally, as he was about to start walking up the 800-foot steep hill to his car, he heard the sounds of a helicopter.
and the helicopter appeared.
It was like everything drained out of me, and it was complete relief and thankfulness.
The helicopter rushed him to an emergency room in Grand Junction, and they did surgery on what was left of his arm. Aron really went through it in the hospital as well. He had 5 different surgeries and a bone infection that was life-threatening, and it required him to have an IV of antibiotics for months. He suffered a ton of chronic pain, especially phantom pain, which is basically where your body still feels as if there's a limb where there isn't one, and you still feel pain from it, even though it's not there anymore. But this this has not stopped Aron from living a full life. I mean, he is so grateful to have survived this. His family is so incredibly thankful. Even though he lost his arm, he still participates in outdoor activities. What was left of his arm was actually recovered and cremated, and Aron was able to spread the ashes and kind of have closure to this whole experience when he was revisiting the canyon for a TV special that he did. Aron documented his experience in that book that I told you guys about, which is titled Between a Rock and a Hard Place, in September of 2004, and it reached number 3 on the New York Times hardcover nonfiction list. And then in 2010, the movie 127 Hours came out, which was based off the accident. The movie did incredible and was nominated for several awards, and at the 83rd Academy Awards in 2011, the film was nominated for 6 Oscars, including the Best Picture and Best Actor.
I still can't believe as I watch, and it's so effective that I'm transported through the experience all over again. But he's just pretending. I mean, he's not actually cutting his arm off, quite obviously, but that it's just he can take us there so effectively. He never overdoes it. That it's just very it's very real. Even as I watch it, there's the moments where when he snaps his bones and he laughs. Like, I was smiling as I was cutting, because that was this it was just the ecstasy of, I'm not gonna die here, I'm gonna get out of this place. How accurate is it? That, you know, factually speaking, it's, I mean, in the 90 percentile kind of range. That there are a few things that were adapted, licensed, fictionalized even, but to the effect of taking you deeper into the story, into the real experience that I had.
Now he just spends a lot of his time public speaking.
There is a sense in my life that this will be part of my life forever and ever. Yeah, I'm the guy who cut his arm off. Carefully get myself into a position where I'm grabbing onto one of the sides of the boulder, the back of the boulder, and I can work my legs down first. If your grandmother gives you a sweater for Christmas, that you feel a little bit of pressure to make sure you wear it. So, like, imagine like the gift of having your life. Like, I feel a little bit of pressure.
How has that changed you, and how have you accepted that you are going to continue to live?
The wilderness gave me a gift of my life. It's given us all a gift of this story of courage.
Good to meet you.
I work with being accepting that this is my life.
You're very inspiring to me.
And yet I also have conversations with my girlfriend about what is my life outside of that.
I want to know, you guys, do you think you'd have the courage to cut your own arm or leg or something off if you had to, if it meant surviving? Or would you drink your own pee even if it meant surviving? Let me know in the comments below. But that's it for me today, guys. I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you next time.